Hello everyone, my name is Bihl. I'm working as a PhD student at Catholic University of Louvain in Belgium with my research supervisor Pierre Fastrez. In this presentation, I'm going to talk about the mutual effects of teenagers' media and information literacy and self-regulation learning, especially within activities that can be empowering. This topic is an aspect of my thesis focus within a larger international research program. This international research program, called ECIL2021, is involving 4 French-speaking universities. The project aims at developing and validating tools for assessing the media and information literacy competence levels of students in information search and multimedia creation. These levels are assessed in lower secondary school in the 4 participating regions: French-speaking Belgium, Québec in Canada, Normandy in France, and the canton of Geneva in Switzerland. We consider MIL as the expression of competence manifest in one's competence-situated action. Competence is more than the mere mastery of knowledge and skills, since it involves selecting and combining relevant knowledge and skills to adapt oneself to novel situations in new and non-stereotypical ways. Defining MIL as competence implies to consider that it is both situated and accessible. This is why assessing MIL as competence means designing meaningful situations for students to engage and act in. My thesis focus is precisely the study of the mode of engagement of students into suggested situations, so that we can understand how to adapt situations and make them more meaningful for every student. The research objectives of the ECIL2021 group are, first, to study the relationship between media literacy skills and competent action in an activity involving the mobilization of different skills in an integrated manner. The second objective is to observe the relation between MIL measure and perceptions of the students. The third objective is to inform the relationship between media literacy competence and media literacy practices. And finally, the fourth objective is to study the factors that can affect media literacy. In this presentation, I will focus on this fourth objective in relation to the first objective. Within the factors that may influence the development of media literacy, I am particularly interested in the factor indicated on the slide, self-regulated learning strategies and their relationship to a sense of empowerment. Our project is broken down into 2 phases. The first phase took place in 2019 with approximately 2,000 high school students. In this survey, we asked them self-assessment questions about their skills, competence, and practices in information search and multimedia creation. During the second phase, which took place in 2020 and 2021, we added this self-declarative questionnaire, a test based on simplified tasks. It means doing an exercise which implies only one of very few skills to succeed. For example, determining the type of document in a list of search results. And then we subjected the students to a performance test based on a complex task called an activity. During this complex task, the students had to carry out a search for information on a subject of their choice and then to produce a multimodal article on a WordPress platform by mixing images and videos. The total duration of the activity was 8 hours, divided into 2 sessions of 50 minutes and 4 sessions of 1 hour and 40 minutes. Finally, the last data collection tool are interviews with 21 students among the 49 students participated in all the tests. The interviews mainly concerned the progress of the activity complex task. So today I am going to talk mainly about phase 2 because it is the one for which we are going to try to correlate the development of MIL with the self-regulation strategies. But before doing this, I want to come back very quickly to the phase 1 in 2019, in which we looked for correlations between students' self-reports and their self-reported general learning readiness level. To do this, we generated 10 general learning readiness items based on 5 sub-themes of learning readiness. Each theme was questioned using a positive and a negative statement for which students were asked to rate themselves on a Likert scale. We found that almost all students exhibited predominantly positive level of learning readiness. So we were unable to observe any correlation between students' self-assessed levels of competence and their self-assessed level of learning. We were also unable to observe any consistent levels, since some students agree for both positive and negative items of the same theme. Therefore, we decided to abandon the study of general disposition to learn and to focus on context-specific dispositions to learn within the activity. So let's now come to phase 2. The main hypothesis we make is that if a student has a disposition to learn in a situation, he or she will be able to use his or her middle knowledge base to develop new knowledge through self-regulated learning, thus forming a virtuous circle. For example, a student who knows how to conduct information searches will know how to search how to use a software in order to develop new knowledge on that software, contributing to what is called competent action. Based on this hypothesis, the research questions are: which students succeeded in developing new knowledge and skills that they did not seem to have in the simplified and self-assessment tasks? What kind of skills did the students develop? Under what conditions were the students able to develop this knowledge and skill? And in this one, 2 sub-questions complementary. Was this development in any way correlated with their self-regulation strategies during the activity? And what role can a sense of empowerment play in this process? In order to answer all these questions, we first designed a potentially empowering media activity. The activity was divided into 4 stages. First, choosing a topic. Second, searching for information on the internet to fit the article. Third, producing the article website. And 4, filling out a self-satisfaction questionnaire about the work. We tried to enhance empowerment senses by 2 means. First, the possibility of asking help and collaborate with classmates, and secondly, the choice of subjects. So 2 options were given here to the students in order to make arise a subject which would interest them. The first option was based on theory of conscientization. It said, by choosing option A, you are choosing to play the role of consciousness raiser. The idea is to allow you to explain to the readers of your article a social problem, and if you wish, your article can suggest ways to improve the problematic situation. The second option was more an interest-driven subject. It said, by choosing option B, you choose to explain a topic that you find interesting, either because you're passionate about it or because you would like to know more about it personally. Here is now our method to extract specific pathways. We crossed statements, test of simplified tasks, and the test based on a complex task. Indeed, as we have evaluated the same knowledge and skill in each of these tests, it is possible to see if for each knowledge and skill, the students have more or less demonstrated and self-declared them competent in each of the tests. The profiles that we are interested in are those for which the students declared that they did not have the skills, that they did not succeed in the simplified task ever, but that they did succeed in the complex task. So let's take one example. Dan had stated that he was not able to create a multimodal article. In the simplified task, he failed to integrate video and hyperlink into an article. But in the complex task, he succeeded both insertions. Once this case study is extracted, what will interest us is to describe the type of skills that the students managed to develop. To do this, we use our evaluation matrix, which is still under development, and which is the result of both the work of Pierre, Fastrez and Thierry de Smet since 2010 and the work of Nathalie Lasselle's team, Groupe de Recherche en Littératie Médiatique, in Québec. This grid of competencies is broken down into 4 types of activity with regard to the immediate object mastered either from a technical, semiotic, or pragmatic point of view. We can then describe different knowledge and skills in each of the small boxes you see. For example, from a pragmatic point of view, the reading activity could be translated as whether the student knows how to check the reliability of the documents he or she consults. From a semiotic point of view, is a student able to identify the type of document when he or she consults a page of search results? In writing, is the student able to integrate an hyperlink in his or her article? And finally, from a technical point of view, but this time in the organization activity, is the student able to store images, text, and videos in order to be able to retrieve them and integrate them in his or her article? Once we know the types of knowledge and skills developed by the students, what will interest us is to be able to observe the correlation between the development of media literacy and variables. First, the base of knowledge and skills in media literacy that the students in question already had, then the self-regulation strategies that these students used during the activity, and finally, number 3, the motivation that these students showed towards the activity. These last 2 contributing more broadly to the mode of commitment of the students into the activity. For number 1, we will use our matrix, as we did for the study of media literacy development, which will allow us to understand whether certain skills and knowledge seem to have been indispensable or useful for unlocking new knowledge during the activity. Then, from the point of self-regulation strategy, we base ourselves on the work of Kronfra, who distinguishes 3 categories of self-regulation. On the one hand, cognitive and metacognitive strategies, cognitive strategies which facilitate the resolution of a problem, and metacognitive strategies which regulate cognitive activities, mainly planning and controlling. On the other hand, volitional strategies allow the individual to maintain through time and in various circumstances his commitment in the activity. And finally, emotional or defensive strategies allow the individuals to protect their self-esteem and are the only ones unfavorable to learning. We decided to gather the volitional and defensive strategies in the same category by opposing them. For this category, we have in our interviews 3 indicators, since we had questions which related to the difficulties met during the activity and the ways to overcome them, the satisfaction about their production, and finally the advice that pupils could give us to improve the activity that we had proposed. Then, for everything that is cognitive and metacognitive strategies, the indicators that we have access to are the understanding of the objectives by the students, the production processes that have been employed by them, and the planning and time management. Once we have gathered both the indicators of self-regulation and the basic knowledge and skills, we will study the motivations of students by focusing our attention on intrinsic versus extrinsic motivation, on the assumption that the sense of empowerment that we had suggested by the empowering activities is likely to generate intrinsic motivation that is more conducive to self-regulation during the activity. The indicators that we have in the interview are, for this one, the motivation before starting the activity, the personal interest linked to the activity, the choice of subject, and the learnings declared by the students after the activity. On the basis of the opposition between volitional versus emotional regulation and intrinsic versus extrinsic motivation, we are going to bring out 4 modes of engagement likely to have influenced the students' ability to develop their MIL in situation. We will therefore observe the correlations between their mode of engagement, their cognitive and metacognitive regulation, and their development of new knowledge and skills. Preliminary observations. Regarding the indicators of motivation before starting the activity, we observed a tendency to average their motivation and to make this motivation their responsibility. The students were in a school mode and not in a leisure activity, since they were trying to meet a requirement without expecting the activity to be a pleasure. Then, regarding the choice of subject, there was quite a division between those who had chosen a subject they mastered so that the work would be easier, and those who had chosen a subject on which they could learn more. Finally, most of them reported learning about the topic that they had worked on. Sometimes they reported learning a little more about how to do research. And finally, what came out was mostly technical skills to know how to insert an image, video, or hyperlink. Concerning the volitional and defensive strategies now, concerning their satisfaction in general, all the students showed a fairly good level of satisfaction with their production, even if the production in questions are of a very disparate level. Concerning, finally, the cognitive and metacognitive regulation, first of all, on the understanding of the objectives, some described the objectives of the international research project, others described the instruction of the activity, and finally, others described the learning objectives linked to the activity. This different understanding of the question can already give an indication of their metacognitive activity. Regarding the production processes, there was a division between those who knew in advance the ideas they wanted to put forward in their paper and those who did a general search and organized the content afterwards or not organize it at all. Finally, regarding planning and time management, most of the students did not plan or just planned in their heads and did not use all the time available to do their work. In conclusion, while we proposed a potentially empowering activity to the students, we realized that the academic aspect of the task often took over. We therefore decided to consider the possible modes of engagement in the activity, and we conceptualized 4 for the moment. The interest of observing whether certain knowledge and skill developed during the activity is to conceive them not only as internal resources that we use to have a competent action, but also as output of this competent action during the media activity. And this would confirm the hypothesis of a virtuous circle through the self-regulation learning process. Our intention is to see if some students have developed new knowledge and skill in MIL during the activity, which would make it possible to fit the enactivist perspective according to which knowledge and skill are not only internal resources that the student mobilizes in situation, but are also outputs allowed by the competent action of the later in situation. This will make it possible to understand the self-development mechanism of the MIL and thus to make it a key instrument of an emancipatory pedagogy in any learning situation through the media. Thank you very much for your attention. If you have any questions, we will be happy to answer them.